What is up, guys? Ranmodium here with your analysis and breakdown for patch 6.15. Riot gave us kind of an early present with these patch notes today. Usually they wait until Wednesday to post them. But it looks like this patch is going to be the first one where they start looking at worlds balance. Looks like we're getting into the playoffs here, so they're looking at what they want the game to look like for worlds. So there's definitely some pretty huge changes that we'll go into. So first up is Braum. They dropped his damage at every single rank on his Q by 10, and then they also reduced the damage from his passive at early levels, but it's actually higher at level 18. So he went from 40 damage at level 1 to 26 damage at level 1, so that's a 14 damage nerf. And then at level 18, he went from 176 to 196, so that's a 20 damage buff. However, I don't think you're really going to notice 20 damage at level 18. So it really is more of a nerf. It's nerfing 10 damage on his Winner's Bite and nerfing 14 damage on his passive, which I think is fine because Braum has been very strong in this meta. For Corky, they originally had changes to his E on the PBE where his E was going to shred a percentage of armor and magic resist, which I was actually really looking forward to, but decided to not implement that. Instead, they're going to reduce the cooldown on his package from, it looks like, 5 minutes to 4 minutes, so 300 seconds to 240 seconds. And I think this is going to be good. I don't know how much it's going to help him in solo queue play because Corky's package really relies on his team assisting him and there being good communication, which is always suspect in solo queue. But at the professional level for LCS and for Worlds and things like that, I think it's going to be really useful. If you look at the 80 carries that are most played in the LCS right now and in professional play in general, it's the 80 carries that have utility. Sivir, Ashe, Jhin, Caitlyn. All these 80 carries have some damage, decent damage, but they have a lot of utility that they provide for their teams. Corky's package is what provides utility in his kit. If you look at Corky's kit, the big thing that provides utility is the package. It allows you to set up plays very much like an Ashe arrow would allow you to set up plays, or a Jhin ultimate will allow you to set up plays. So I think these changes are designed to bring Corky back in the meta, or at least make him a situational pick where you might want to go for him to set up, those big package plays. For Hecarim, it looks like they're going to be nerfing his damage, so they're reducing his Q damage by 10 at all levels, and they're reducing his base attack damage by about 3. So first off, this is going to really hurt his first jungle clear, because Hecarim is already really mana intensive, and then now he's going to do 10 less damage per Q. And then also this is going to make his power spike for Trinity Force not as strong because the Sheen proc on Trinity Force scales off of base attack damage, so his base attack damage is going down, and then also usually you use your Rampage a lot to get those Sheen procs. So overall, Hecarim is going to be doing less damage and have a less severe power spike when he gets Trinity Force. Lowy, so she just got a slight, I guess you would call it a nerf. Her tentacles are now visible in the brush to an enemy champion within the normal vision range. I assume that means that even if you don't have a ward in that bush, you'll still be able to see the tentacle if it's within your normal vision range. This is going to be significant for her against ranged champions, because right now if you're playing a Lowy against a ranged top laner, which there aren't that many, but there are a few, it's really difficult because they just clear out your tentacles with their ranged auto attacks all the time. So that's very challenging to play her against a ranged champion. So yeah, I'm curious to see how this will affect her in solo queue. Jarvan. So the past couple patches, they buffed his W, giving him a little bit more tankiness, and then now they're buffing his E on the attack speed. So this should make Jarvan's clears a little bit better. Pretty much the only person that I've been seeing um, Jarvan played on is Ray for Apex. He's the only one who really plays Jarvan, at least in Europe or NA, and he built him like full assassin Jarvan. So I think this is designed to kind of make it so that tank Jarvan might be a little bit better and that jungle Jarvan might be a little bit better. So we'll see if this actually brings Jarvan back in the meta, because his Flag and Drag is just fantastic, and his ult does a ton of damage now. So yeah, I think you'll see Jarvan become more of a situational pick. Karma got nerfed. So first off, they made it so that her shield can no longer target minions. I don't really know why. I guess this was an issue for some people. They didn't like the fact that you could shield the minion and mess up people's last hitting, or allow a minion to survive longer while it was getting focused by the tower or something. And then they reduced the shield amount by 10 at all ranks. Furthermore, for her movement speed on her E, instead of it being 60% at all ranks, they now made it scaling with rank. So it starts at 40% at rank 1, goes up to 60% at rank 5. This is probably a good change, because Karma's speed up, especially when paired with Sivir, was just pretty ridiculous how much she was able to speed up her team. So I think this is good. Karma was on the verge of being like in that overpowered range. So yeah, I think these nerfs were in the right direction for her. Kassadin is actually getting buffs this patch, which is very weird. His damage on his Q has been buffed, though he actually does 5 damage less at rank 1, but at all of the ranks he does equal or better. And it actually winds up being a 15 damage buff at max rank. And then they reduce the mana cost of his E, his Force Pulse. So I don't know if I really understand these changes, because Kassadin right now, he's not like an OP pick in the LCS, but he is played in the LCS right now. He's a situational pick. He's used in like as a counter pick sometimes. I feel like giving him buffs could throw him into like that OP category. So these buffs are very weird, especially right before Worlds. Malzahar got hit with the nerf bat really freaking hard this patch. So last patch they hit him on his attack range and his movement speed, and then this patch they are hitting his passive really hard. So his passive cooldown is still the same at level 1, but at level 16 it's double what it was before. It used to be 6 seconds, now it's 12 seconds. And then on top of that, the shield duration, it used to last for like 1 second after taking damage. Now it's only 0.25 seconds after taking damage. So this is going to make it so that he's going to be a lot less powerful. He's going to be a lot easier to blow up. He's going to be a lot easier to CC, which is good. Because he has been a very strong pick for a while now. I'm just wondering if it's going to be too much, if it's just going to he's just going to completely disappear from the competitive scene after these changes. Nidalee got some really interesting changes, and when I first saw these changes, I was like, these changes are freaking stupid, because they lower the skill floor of Nidalee and they lower the skill ceiling of Nidalee. They reward people who aren't good with Nidalee, and they punish people who are good with Nidalee. But then I read what Riot's explanation was, and I kind of agree with it. So the changes pretty much are that minimum damage is getting a slight buff. Maximum damage is getting also a slight buff at the lower ranks. And then they're also increasing the ability power ratio and the damage on her takedown, which is her Q in Cougar form. But they are reducing the basic attack reset when you switch between forms. And that was a lot of the what really good Nidalee players would do is they would be able to get that auto attack reset when they were switching forms, which allowed them to really get a lot of additional damage. And the reasoning for Riot to get rid of that is that they felt like this was preventing them from properly balancing Nidalee, because she was getting all this free damage from the auto attack resets. They felt like they had to keep stripping away power from her abilities, which made her auto attack resets even more powerful. So they're just getting rid of the auto attack resets so that way they can put more for power back into her abilities. And I definitely agree with that. That makes perfect sense. And yeah, I guess a temporary consequence is that her skill floor is going to drop and her skill ceiling is going to drop a little bit. But I think it'll be a healthier change in the long run for Nidalee. Renekton got a slight buff, so his damage from his ultimate is going to be increased a bit more at his first rank and second rank. So his level 6 and level 11. And Renekton has definitely he's been kind of like on the outside of the meta. We saw him last Worlds as a counter pick, and he's been kind of lurking around there. I think he could come back into the meta as a counter pick in certain situations. They also made it so that he gains 20 Fury whenever he casts his ultimate. So that kind of gives you a different thing that you can play around on when you actually use his ultimate. So yeah, I think Renekton's going to be kind of a pocket pick for some players, kind of a counter pick in certain situations, going into playoffs and going into Worlds. So I'm curious to see how teams use him. Shen got his health regeneration nerfed. I'm kind of confused with this. I guess this is along the same lines as the nerfs they did to Trundle. Like they think that Shen's health regeneration is too boring. That's the only way that I can put it, is that it makes it so that you can't punish him as effectively. But I don't really feel like Shen was really that overpowered, or that his health regeneration was anything really amazing. So I'm kind of confused by that nerf. My only explanation is that they wanted to make it more, make you able to punish him easier. That he's not just like a rock in lane who can never get pushed out. Alright, Siobhan is getting a slight buff, so they're buffing her passive fury generation. So instead of getting like 0.66 per second, now she gets 1 per second at earlier levels. It's still the same at later levels. So trying to buff her early game a little bit, since she got nerfed really, really hard with the Devourer changes and things like that. So hopefully this will help Siobhan. I don't think it's going to bring her back in the meta. She's still too weak. So they definitely need to look at other ways to change her. Sona got a hotfix because she's just really freaking powerful. They also did some bug fixes with this patch. So they made it so that her Arya Perseverance can no longer be instantly cast after Song of Celerity. So that's definitely a good little fix there. And then from the hotfix was that they reduced her heal on her W and her movement speed on her E. So Talia got her changes last patch, and then this patch they're also going to be nerfing her again. This time they're nerfing the duration on her the cooldown on her ultimate. So it's still the same at level 16, but it's 20 seconds higher at rank 1 and 10 seconds higher at rank 2, which I think is fine because Talia, her map pressure was really huge, and her wave clear was really impressive. So she was able to instantly push out a wave, and then she could just roam. And that was it got really difficult. If Talia got ahead in mid lane, it was really hard to punish her. It was really hard to counter her roams, because if she roamed, your counter to that was that you would push the wave back in and get some tower damage. But because she could clear the wave so fast, it made it really hard for you to do that. So I like these changes. And yeah, I think Talia is really strong. Even now, even with the changes, she's still strong. Vayne's actually getting a buff, which I don't think I've ever seen that, or at least not for a very long time. So now they're making it so that her tumble deals the bonus damage to structures as well. So she can tumble into a tower and deal that bonus damage to the tower, rather than you just getting that tumble sound over and over and over again when you hit a tower. And they also made it so that her tumble bonus damage and her basic attack no longer crit independently. So if one crits, then the other crits, and that makes perfect sense. I'm glad that they made that change. So slight buff to Vayne that will allow her to take towers faster, which I don't think it's going to bring her back into the meta, but it will definitely give her maybe a slight boost to her win rate, because she definitely struggled at taking towers. She was the duelist. She was the late game hyper carry. So yeah. All right, Victor. Slight nerf. So they made it so now that when the Chaos Storm was going towards Victor, it was moving at max speed. Now they made it so that it only goes at max speed if you target Victor with his ultimate. So that's just a slight nerf. I don't think it's really going to impact him that much. Vladimir also got slight nerfs. Movement speed has been dropped by 5, and cooldown on his W has been increased by 2 seconds at all ranks. Then they also did a bug fix for Zac. I definitely encountered this one where sometimes if you use your E, it would like have him go in like a random direction. Yeah, and it turns out that's when that happened whenever your cursor was hovering over the minimap when you did that. So I'm glad that they made that change. And then Zyra actually got buffs, which is very weird. The explanation for it was that now that she's getting less free plant damage after that change to her plants and how their AI works, they decided to buff her Q damage and also buff the ability power ratio. So yeah, that's curious. I feel like Zyra is still really strong, but okay, we'll see how her win rate is affected by that. They updated the splashes for Prestigious LeBlanc and Spell Thief Lux. I really love this Prestigious LeBlanc splash update. I think it's really, really cool. So yeah, I'll definitely be playing some LeBlanc and showing off that skin in the future. So the Ardent Sensor Mikhails Crucible changes. So when I first read this change, I thought what they were saying was that the bonus healing and shield power no longer stack with each other. So if you had Ardent Sensor and Mikhails, they wouldn't stack with each other. That's not what this change is saying. If you have Ardent Sensor and you have Mikhails, the two passives stack still. However, if you have multiple Ardent Sensors or multiple Mikhails Crucibles, they don't stack. So that's the change. Is they were worried about people buying like 2 or 3 Ardent Sensors and getting the passive for each one of those Ardent Sensors. So they're removing that capability, so you can't stack Ardent Sensors over and over again and get plus 15% healed and shield power every single time. But you can still build Ardent Sensor and Mikhails and get 30% heal and shield power. Alright, so the outer turret changes. This is one of the biggest changes for competitive play with this patch. So they're reducing the local gold for killing a tower. They're also up making the towers have 200 more health for the outer turrets. Furthermore, they're reducing the fortification for the towers. And for those of you who don't know, fortification is damage reduction the tower gets for the first part of the game, which makes it harder to take towers in the early part of the game. So instead of it being 7 minutes, it's now 5 minutes. But to compensate for that, they've increased the damage reduction on fortification. So now, for the first 5 minutes of the game, top and mid towers, outer towers, will reduce your damage by 50% instead of 35%. That's huge. That's going to make taking top and mid towers extremely difficult. On top of this, they removed fortification completely from the bottom tower. So bottom tower is now a lot easier to get than it used to be. On top of this, they also made it so that the first turret that is killed gives 400 bonus gold. So these changes are designed to get rid of the lane swap meta. Let's just be honest here. Like, you know, Riot said, oh, we want to make it a strategic choice when you go for lane swap. No, this is just going to straight up kill the lane swap meta. Which is going to be really interesting because it's going to make champ select a lot more interesting, because counter picks and lane matchups are going to play a much larger role in how the early game goes, because you're not going to want to go into that lane swap. Because if you give up that, you know, that first turret, that's an extra 400 gold that the enemy team gets. So that's huge changes. Should really impact champion select. Should really impact the early game. Should make it so that lane swapping very rarely happens, if at all. And they're really doing this because they want the early game to be more exciting. Let's face it, lane swaps are boring. Riot wants exciting games in the LCS, so they're making it so that lane swapping is not as advantageous as it has been in the past. They also made some very interesting changes to siege minions. So now, at the beginning of the game, starting with the third minion wave, the siege minions will cycle from wave to wave to wave. So at wave 3, bot lane, and bot lane only, gets a siege minion. Wave 4, mid lane, and mid lane only, gets a siege minion. Wave 5, top lane and top lane only, gets a siege minion. This will repeat until 20 minutes. Once you hit 20 minutes, it'll alternate between mid lane getting a siege minion, and then the side lanes getting a siege minion. And then at 35 minutes, all lanes will get a siege minion every wave. So this is going to, I don't think this will have any impact on your solo queue games. At the LCS level, there's going to be some high level strategic decision making that will allow teams to get very strategic backs and eke out very slight advantages based off of, you know, what lane is getting the cannon minion when. So this really won't affect solo queue, but it will be used a lot at the LCS and pro level. So I'm definitely curious to see how teams utilize these changes to siege minions. Twisted Tree Line, Lord Van Dam's Pillager is back. I don't really care. Minimap icon cleanup, so it looks like they're getting rid of various player-created objects and pets no longer generate minimap icons. They said you probably won't even notice it. So, okay, I'll take your word for it. Champion Select, they're going to be testing a feature in some regions that shows how much lower or higher your queue times may be based on the positions you select. This is kind of a cool little thing. It's kind of similar to the old like team builder where you get to see like, oh, am I gonna have a medium or long queue time if I want to go top lane or something like that. This is interesting. I don't know if it's gonna really change how people queue up though. I think most people are willing to wait for their primary role. They're going to be expanding ranked team queues. So now it's going to be 4 p.m. Pacific time to 12 a.m. Pacific time on weekdays, and 2 p.m. to 12 on weekends. And then they fixed quite a few little bugs. And then for this patch, we get the project skins: Project Ash, Project Echo, Project Katarina. Definitely excited for those skins. So yeah, let me know if you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you agree with what I said. I think there's some pretty huge changes for the pro scene with this patch. I don't feel like solo queue is going to be as affected by a lot of these changes, which is fine. I understand that Riot's trying to balance around worlds and trying to make worlds as exciting as they can. And I definitely like the pro changes that they're making with this patch. But yeah, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I am trying to get 200 subscribers by the end of the season. So please help me out with that if you want to support the channel. I hope you all have a great day. This is Ranmonium signing off.